I hope you are all doing well. Welcome to the Developing Leaders to Succeed webinar. I want to say a personal thank you to our presenters today, Greg Walpole, our Master Licensee of LMI South Africa, Nick Howes, our Master Licensee of LMI UK, Karen Shorey, a USA partner in Maine and Central Illinois, Grace Haddad, our Master Licensee of the East Mediterranean region, and Ashok Tusu, our Master Licensee of the South Asian region in LMI India. So I want to say a special thank you to all of you, and thank you to each of you who were able to make it here. I know that time changed in Europe last week. Time just changed in the US yesterday. So it's just been a lot of time changes. So if you made it, you can pat yourself on the back. That's always a win when you can make something after a time change. So we're so happy you're here. The point of today's meeting is to hear from some experts around the world who are going to be sharing some best practices on how to develop leaders and organizations to their full potential. They're all representatives of LMI, and we're an international leadership training organization that our mission is to develop leaders and organizations to their full potential through a process and programs and goal setting practices that each of you can implement as well. So today we're not just going to be talking about our programs or anything like that. We're going to be talking about a process that each of you can implement in your own personal and organizational lives to help you set goals, achieve those goals, and get real measurable results as we enter into this new phase of the world and this new phase of business as things are rapidly changing. So before we start, again, I want to make sure everyone has a chance to know how this is going to function. We're just going to do the presentation on this session today. If you do have a question, go ahead and put it in the Q&A function of this, and I will follow up with those who ask questions. I'll make sure I get the questions, who ask them, send them out to the local representative in your area, and they will get in contact with you about your questions. So we're not going to address the questions live today, but we will make sure that someone follows up with you afterwards. So again, thank you everyone for being here. We're going to go ahead and get started with Nick Howes, our Master Licensee of LMI UK. Nick, go ahead.
Thank you, Jonah, and thank you all for coming along today. At whatever time of day it is where you are. I'm in the UK. It's in the afternoon, middle of the afternoon, and my responsibility is to get things started with a bit of a look around what is the state of leadership development currently. Jonah mentioned that our mission is developing leaders and organizations to their full potential. We want leaders and organizations to succeed. And unfortunately, that's not always the case. I'm speaking from the UK. You might have, if you've seen news from our country, we've had some challenges around leadership recently. And so it's a big issue for us. And it really matters around what's happening around leadership. Excuse me, just moving things on a little bit too quick there. Here we go. Let's just get the hang of this. So we've kind of, this first slide really is about a choice that could make or break your company, your organization. And it's about leadership development. And we want it to be done well. And clearly organizations around the world recognize that developing leaders is massively important. So this figure on the screen, £366 billion is spent annually on leadership development. That's a phenomenal amount of money. And so we should be seeing a lot of great leadership happening. If I think about the UK, a lot of that money is spent in the UK, and yet still leadership or the need for better leaders, more capable leaders to lead in the current climate is still a big one. So despite the investment, there's this leadership gap. Organizations, again, we're looking a lot at what different research organizations are saying, what's been published, what are leaders themselves in different companies saying. And what they're saying is there's a big gap between the leaders and the leadership quality that they have and what they need to succeed in the current times and in future times. So a few kind of illustrations of that. Despite all that investment, 93% of organizations are still spending less than $4,000 per year on leadership development. So there's a lot being spent, but there's still in many organizations not much being spent. 77% of organizations say that they are currently experiencing a leadership gap. So right now, 3/4 and a little bit more of organizations are saying we don't have the leadership in place, the leaders that we need for where we are now. And then 56% are saying we haven't, we're not ready to meet future leadership needs. So people tend to be a bit more optimistic about where they're going. We're not quite there yet, but we will get there. Either way you cut it, there is a massive gap between current leadership and what's required, and particularly generational things around. Many organizations globally have more leaders that are coming towards the end of their careers, and lots of young new talent, and needing this kind of bridge to bridge this gap so that organizations are prepared for what's coming with leaders, not just talent, but leaders that can lead. So something quickly about the problem as we see it with leadership development, and as has been borne out by the research. So we mentioned again that 366 billion spent last year on leadership development. However, only 10% of CEOs believe that their current development initiatives have a clear impact on the business. So loads is being spent, but it's not impacting on the business. When times are great, I can perhaps afford to invest some money, and if it doesn't make a big difference, well, then we can live with that. But now that is very definitely not the case. Budgets are tight. There is fierce competition in the marketplace globally, so organizations can't afford to waste money, and they need that competitive edge. And therefore, more than ever, this desperate need for ROI, for return on investment on what's spent, not just for the sake of it, not just as a kind of a vanity metric, but because this bottom thing here around the 10% that see the clear business impact, organizations need a business impact. So the problem, though, despite those needs, still the predominant way that leadership development is being delivered are in these short workshops, 1 or 2 days. Occasionally they're 3, 4, maybe even 5 days. And they're expensive because you're putting people into hotels, you're paying travel fees, you are putting people into rooms where lots of information is being shared with them. So there's limited interaction because there's so much to cover. There's all sorts of aspects of leadership, and people are being sent away or have trainers come into their companies, if it's in-house, to deliver this information. And it can be fantastic information, but in that context, there's zero on-the-job practice and feedback. Those slides have moved. Yeah, so the need for not just learning, and the world as it stands today, it's never been easier to get information. We can all go online, watch a webinar, read a book, listen to a podcast. We can get the information, but the challenge for leadership is not simply getting the right knowledge. It's about this practice, feedback, review, getting better on the job with some support and coaching. We'll come into that later, because things that we only experience once, 98% of it is forgotten after 1 month. And so it can work if people are going away after their development experience, their couple of days training, and routinely reviewing that. But we know how many emails people have, how much stuff people have to get back to. And the challenge that just becomes great. Even though the feedback forms right at the end of that session will be great. That was learnt loads. That was a fantastic training experience. 93% of managers are saying we need training on how to develop, how to coach our employees, because the world today doesn't generally accept autocratic, authoritarian leadership. It's a much more nuanced way of developing people, helping them to reach their potential. And yet more and more are being put into leadership roles without the coaching, the support, and the clear picture of what succeeding in that role looks like. And even only a small number of leaders are saying that the leadership training they have had is relevant. So the investment compared to what's actually needed just reinforces this gap. Oh, let me go back here. We like this quote here. Business leaders must become what we call infinite learners, those who not only enjoy learning, but feel a constant need to acquire new skills. Leadership in the current day is not a one-time thing. Yeah, we did that. I went on a leadership course. It's this experience of learning, reviewing, understanding what's happening in the world and translating it into the current situation with my people, with my organization, with our business and what it is we do. And so this ongoing requirement rather than one-off is a really important one. So, and this is the final slide that I have to present here. The leadership that's been in place for years will be gone. Some organizations are ahead of the curve with this, but many aren't. The recognition that 70% of the workforce will be millennials, that would be age 45 and under by the year 2025. Think about the organizations you know and how many of the senior leaders would fall above that, and the need for leadership development to be meeting those requirements now and ongoing. And 84% of organizations anticipate a shortfall. So they're looking at the world as they see it, as it unfolds, and saying, we don't have the leaders ready to meet what's coming in the next 5 years. And that's just not a few. That's 84% of organizations are saying that is their situation. That's me done for now, and I shall hand it over.
Thank you, Nick. Well, building on what you were sharing with us, I want to dig a bit deep more into some data from the business around the world. So Deloitte has recently did a survey study, which included more than 2,500 business owners and HR leaders from 94 different countries. So they asked them to rank 12 different trends or business trends that we're facing right now, as asking them which one is the highest, most important topic to deal with in the business world right now. So most of the respondents have picked these three trends. One, that companies know and need that effective leadership. Two, that good leadership must be created quickly because they need to replace some of the old leadership that's being gone. And they are in urgent need of people to step up and be up for the responsibility and fill their roles. You might see as well that, I'm going to share with you the graph, actually the numbers, then more than 50% of the respondents have voted for leadership to be a highest priority, even urgent priority to start with, or what they're facing right now in their companies, as well as for engagement, for HR skills, upskilling, talent retention. So this is showing us more and more the actual reality that we're facing now and the gap that you, Nick, were talking about. So if we want to actually put the facts out there and discuss what's really happening here. First, companies are not being able to plan for the future. You'll be surprised. A recent study by McKinsey has mentioned or showed the results that 4.3 million people have voluntarily left their work, they left their jobs in December 2021. And actually in November 2021, it was they actually hit a record high of people leaving their jobs. So we see that the rules of the game are changing. People are more eager for more human-centered leadership, where they feel inspired, where they feel motivated, they feel connected and engaged. Those that are required to step up are not being able to do so. They come from an amazing experience, they have great skills, especially technical skills in their field, but unfortunately they lack effective leadership skills. And this, what's happening right now, is total waste of talent, money, and time for companies because they're not being able to fill this gap. So as you might see, that these facts or this reality that we're facing has resulted this massive gap between where leaders stand today and where they want to be or where they should be actually. So this might be coming from lack of experience. This might be coming, as we mentioned, or even nowadays more with the post-COVID era, from lack of meaning, lack of engagement, lack of motivation or desire actually to go to work. And because they don't feel like their work is meaningful, they don't feel like they have someone that they can approach as a leader and to be influenced by. So all these circumstances that are happening, they're causing definitely more turnover rates to increase, morale of the companies are going down, the culture of the company is decreasing. So unfortunately, this eventually will lead companies to probably close their doors, let people off, and will definitely affect not just the people working there, but also the communities around these businesses. So what should be done? I mean, what are the options here to take? You know, a lot of probably shocking numbers, but there's always a solution. So companies have 3 solutions or 3 paths or 3 options to pick from. First, grow and adapt to development, develop their employees into leaders, make sure that the leadership bench is full, make sure that they are qualified and ready to assume leadership and step up. The second option would be wait a bit, you know, not take quick actions into adopting development. That will definitely leave them behind. And that would definitely affect them because employees right now are changing jobs, I mean, as quick as you blink your eyes. So that would definitely put them behind. The third option would be that they would do nothing. And it's the worst option, as you can see. So eventually this will lead to drastic, changes for the company, like maybe shutting down, downsizing, letting people go. So we definitely don't want that. What is the solution? I mean, what are we looking at here? We're not just stating numbers. I think everyone here on the call would agree. These are the challenges that we hear from our clients all over the 80 countries that we're in. But what is needed here to solve this is an actual shift of the mindset, is a mental shift. So we are, as Nick mentioned earlier, we're used to this, I'm going to say emotional pep rallies, where we go have a team building day activity, I don't know, barbecue, emotional, inspirational session. We watch a speech. It's fun, it's nice. Definitely it lifts up the morale. Definitely we might probably enhance a skill or update the skill, but it's not really sustainable. And we need to really break through from the mentality that leaders are by positions. This is not the case anymore. So leaders need to be people who actually influence others through their qualities, through who they are as a character. They need to be constant learners. They shouldn't feel like they arrived to the finish line and that's it, and now we're leaders. It's not like that. It's actually where it starts, you know. And also leaders need to inspire others and believe in them and their potential. So if we're going to put it in short as a definition for leadership nowadays, is to simply inspire and motivate others. So you'd be surprised with some, I'm going to surprise you more with some extra numbers that Gallup has recently made a study, and where they asked employees to rank from 1 to 5. How much is their manager approachable? How much the manager helps them in setting goals, whether personal, whether professional? So how much they feel that they're engaged with their management, okay? And out of the people who voted 5, so strongly agree that their managers are approachable, more than 50% are engaged. And the people who voted strongly disagree, you have a combination of almost 9% of people who are engaged. So you can imagine how would a company look like if almost 65% of its people is disengaged, and not just disengaged. The issue that we're facing here, you've all have been hearing definitely of quiet quitting and all this trend. So the issue that we're facing here is that people are actually coming to work with intentional disengagement and disrupting of the productivity and the relationships. And another thing to add here is that sometimes it's not, the challenge is not also with only with the employees, rather sometimes with some board members who are probably not on the same vision or they're not aligned. And that definitely will cause dramatic impact on the whole company. My colleague Greg will dig deeper more into this idea of being aligned and having the same vision. So what to do. I mean, you would ask me, okay, Grace, it's great that we're discussing all these things, but what is actually the solution here? So the solution would be that a mindset shift from actually building development in the company, building the concept of development based on emotional pep rallies, and moving this mentality towards building development based on sustainable development process. And this sustainable development process is actually what we do at LMI. So at Leadership Management International, we have created an all-encompassing leadership development process called the Total Leader. So I'm gonna leave you at that point and give the floor to my colleague, Greg, to dig deeper into this concept and how it can help shift this mindset with companies and employees.
Thank you, Grace. And welcome to all our visitors from around the globe and my colleagues today. My name is Greg. I'm speaking to you from Cape Town, South Africa. It's early evening. It's a beautiful day. And I'm really pleased to be able to join you in this conversation about the development of leadership. I didn't start when I worked through my SMI programs in the right place. I thought I was actually probably a lot better than I was at the time. So when I look at the process that we put together, we try and build leaders in a way that they can master all aspects of leadership. And that's not easy. What do we need is we need someone who's willing, aware, determined, and happy with the ability to practice and to develop those skills. So when we come into the field of management leadership, let's not talk about management first. We're really about how do we productively do our work as a manager? And we focus our skill sets around that and developing our ability to be productive. You can't really lead others if you can't be productive yourself. You can't take people to a productive place if you're not being productive. It's just not possible because they'll suss it out very quickly. I think the average employee these days wastes more than 2 full work days per month on social media and other distractions. Let's not call them necessarily internet distraction, but it's a very distracting world to live in. And the cost of disengagement is massive, not just in the US, but across the world. And I get the feeling quite often that people are sort of getting over the middle of the week, which they call Hump Wednesday here. And then thank goodness it's Friday. So they're putting in the time, but not necessarily putting in the level of engagement that's required to be productive. Being productive takes discipline, method, skills, and habits. And in the development of those in the process, through practice, repetition, focusing on high-pay activities, we find that we manage to get the first stage of leadership in place. That's the ability to be respected for what you can actually produce. When we move on from that, the game changes. We now really required to be leader managers, and we've got to move into the field of actually influencing rather than instructing. And the ability to influence people is going to depend on who you are being as a person. The methodology and process has to really allow us to develop the skill of working with self in order to bring out the best person in ourselves. It's only when we can get that in place that we can start to have influence on others. When we talk about the gap between management and leadership, management's easy. That's, organizing yourself around method, manpower, machinery. Leadership is difficult because leadership requires you to make some personal changes and to be able to flex your style and be able to appreciate the needs and desires of others in order for them to feel influenced by you rather than driven by you. Quite a statistic that, being engaged at work. And the levels of active disengagement or quiet disengagement are massive in the globe at the moment. And that's really, I don't think it was caused by COVID. I think COVID showed it up. I think that the pandemic that we were in made us realize, hey, there's a different way of living and working here. And working from home is fine because I'm not getting what I need from the work situation. If one has better leadership, the desire to be at office, the desire to be with the team, the desire to be engaged with the organization that we're working with is far higher than if we have good management, because good management and good leadership are totally different things. So this diagram shows that the skills of leadership lie in actually having all of your life's paradigms aligned with each other. So you really don't just lead at home, you lead at work, you lead in your community, you lead yourself. So this whole process of developing the whole self in order for you to be more effective is critically important. Now, of course, once we've mastered, we never do, once you've taken the step to move from personal leadership into motivational leadership, we'd all love to be motivational leaders and to be classed as motivational leaders. I'm telling you, it's very, very hard if you don't have a methodology and a system in place. So when we move into a situation as a leader where we're actually motivating others and actually encouraging them to be their better selves, we need tools, we need a process, because the tools and the process are what makes it happen. And the tools and the process are key to what we do. And I've worked with now thousands of developing leaders. And the moment I get them into this particular development course called Effective Motivational Leadership, I find that their relationship with their teams, as they cascade this material through the organization, grows in leaps and bounds, and they actually then start to get the real sense of who their people are, what the people have been challenged with, what the people are good at, how they to bring out the best in their people. It's a methodology, it's a system, it's a structure. It doesn't leave any guesswork. It shouldn't be guesswork. Leadership, if you're motivating your team, should be far more than guesswork. Moving on very quickly, we then see the leader moving into a stage where they need to actually develop their strategic leadership skills. I wrote something here, and I'm just going to read this note. I think we're all chasing the experience economy. I think all of us know what the experience economy is. We know that it's no longer about features, advantages, benefits, and good products. Everybody's building good cars. Everybody's got features. Everybody's got advantages and benefits. What they're chasing now is the level of client and customer engagement that's going to make the experience of working with you one that makes you come back. We don't deliver the customer experience at a leadership level in an organization. We deliver that experience through the client-facing staff, who might be the vehicle driver who's doing the delivery, who might be the person behind the counter, might be the person taking the phone call. And how many of our people know what the company's strategy is? Have we got a story that our clients know so well through the actual interface they have with the member of the team that they're dealing with, who will not necessarily be a leader, more likely an operator? So this leadership process and the ability to develop a communicable leadership strategy and company strategy to your team is very, very much the major part of a senior leader's job. How we do that is where we're going to with this webinar. So I just want to recap. The building of leaders requires productivity, personal development so they can lead themselves to lead others, motivational leadership where they can actually influence and impact on others in a significant way, and then the ability to build on that and develop a strategy which one can communicate and drive right down through the whole organization in order for the client and customer experience to be great. Thank you for your time with me today. I look forward to the next session.
Thank you, Greg. And there's one thing that, I listened from what you shared that really stood out to me, is that if we're going to have effective leadership, it has to begin with ourselves. And having that methodology is super super important. So how does LMI implement change in organizations? Well, we actually want to tell you how you can implement change in your organization. And we want to tell you about the process that we use, maybe a little secret that we use, but we have to be intentional. And so I want to share something with you. I get the fun part of kind of being able to share some real stories and examples. But I want to go back to when my girls, I have 3 daughters, and I forgot to say my name. I'm Karen Shorey. And if you can't tell by my accent, I'm not from across the pond. I'm from the US, and it is morning for me. So it's my pleasure to be on this panel with everybody here. But what's unique is that this same process works all across the globe. And I think that's amazing. So let me go and tell you a story about my girls. My girls were young, and they were, in that stage where you get braces on. And I remember the orthodontist telling me what it was going to look like for the girls, et cetera. And so they would go like every week or 2, I can't recall now, and he'd tighten things and tweak things. And eventually it looked like their smile was just perfect. And he'd make them keep those braces on for a little bit longer. And then when he finally said, all right, we can take off the braces, he said, oh, and by the way, they're going to have to wear a retainer for the rest of their life. And so that retainer, I'm like, well, why would they have to wear it for the rest of their life? You just spent all this money to fix their teeth. They look straight. And he said, because your mouth has muscle memory. And that really struck me, because we have muscle memory in our minds, in every action that we do. And we can change something. And many of you have started habits before. And if we don't keep with accountability and the being repetitive over and over again, doing the same things all the time, then eventually our muscle memory kicks back in and we go back to our old habits. And so LMI has a process that we want to share with you about how to make that true change. So a few examples, a couple of the programs have been mentioned that we utilize. I use a couple other programs that are different. I use an effective personal program. That's one of my favorites, personal productivity, and another one called effective leadership development. Amazing programs that really help us. But what we see is this change based on what you've already heard of recognizing, here's the problem. We know that our leaders need some change. Now, this is how we're going to figure out how to get that change. So a couple quick stories before I share my next slide with you is I recently had the privilege to work with a production manager of a manufacturing company, very hard worker, great guy. I asked him how many hours he worked in a typical week, just trying to get some information about him. Found out that he worked close to 70 hours a week. Now, if you know anything about me, I'm not the quickest when it comes to numbers, but that's every day. He was working every day. Even when he was home, he was going back in or on his phone. He was always working, and he was exhausted. In fact, he couldn't recall the last time he took a vacation and spent time with his family. His family included 2 sons, who the youngest son was just going off to college. And there was a lot of regret that he felt like he had missed some of the great years of his boy's life. And so a few months after working with me, he had taken his work hours from 70 down to 45 and had not compromised any of the quality of work that he was still producing. His wife was ecstatic. She actually called me and thanked me because she felt like she had her husband back. So how did we do that? Well, we identified an attitude. And the attitude was, if he didn't go into work, things would fall apart. And when we figured out and we dug down below, we changed that attitude, and look what happened. It just changed his life. Another person that I had the privilege of working with was a vice president of a company. And she too was really juggling everything. She was a mom, she was a wife, a lot of responsibilities at work. She would come home, she would try to take care of her family, put the kids to bed, and she would go back to work until probably midnight every night, just exhausted. After again working with us for a couple of months, she too was able to find that balance that she was looking for. And why? Because we identified the attitude that she had, and that was she couldn't delegate. She felt like if she delegated that, she would overwhelm her staff, or they couldn't do it as good as her. And what she actually found was she was stunting her staff, and she was taking away from them an opportunity for them to grow. So she adjusted her attitude, she adjusted her behaviors and her actions, and she was able to find that balance, and her results were priceless. So we want to share this change with you because it really does work. Those are real examples of people that I've personally worked with. And so we want to show you how that works. So on this next slide, you'll see our process or our change chain is what I call it. So we look at success. The level of success that we want to see is really based on our results. What are we doing that's causing our success? Our results come from our behaviors, our actions, and then behind that, if we continue to peel this back to figure out where is all this coming from, that's where the attitude shows up. And I remember as a kid, my mother saying, your attitude is everything. I think the attitude is just the beginning. That's kind of the middle of where this all is. So when we help our clients identify what their attitudes are that are not serving them, some of their attitudes are great. They're showing up. They're doing their best that they can for their employees. They're trying their very best, but they may have some limiting attitudes that are also holding them back. So when we figure out what those are, that's when we can make change. And so we have to figure out, first of all, where did their attitudes come from? That comes from our conditioning. When we were a child, all those influences over us that shape how we believe, what our thoughts are, that's called conditioning. And that conditioning comes from spaced repetition. Now, I realize that I'm speaking to people from different countries, so I don't know if flashcards are a normal thing in other countries when you're in second, third grade, when you're learning your times tables and your multiplication, but that was something in my school. And we always had those flashcards, and they would always tell us 4 times 5 is 20, 6 times 6 is 36. And we would just know after a while. It was almost like muscle memory back again. And so that spaced repetition conditioned us for our attitudes and our habits, and that changes our behaviors and influences our results, and that determines our success. So I think I'm going to leave it for here, and we're going to let Ashcott go into this a little more in depth.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you for bringing out the imperatives of the process of change so well. Actually, it's the same process which we use, giving new ideas, having those being practiced by spaced repetition and forming conditioning, and then growing up in this direction which he has shown. So I'd like to also mention that a report by AMA indicates that 68% of leadership failure occurs due to low levels of a core band of leadership competencies that a leader needs. The need to change is huge. We need to grow and adapt, as was mentioned earlier. Karen also talked of these attitudes and conditioning. Attitudes are habits of thought, and they are prime to the whole issue. We are creatures of habit, conditioned into patterns of thought and subsequent actions. And that is formed over a period of time. We form habits, some good, some not so good, some obsolete, and some limiting beliefs and attitudes do step in. And there is huge need to change habits, because if we do not change our habit patterns, nothing happens. A change in habit can only be formed if the habit is displaced out by a better one. A replacement habit has to be formed before anything happens. Unless we form a new habit, no change will occur. And as has been mentioned by several of my colleagues, that we are into a very specialized methodology that produces huge change. Now, power of spaced repetition as at the core of the change. Karen talked of those flashcards and everything. Everything we know, it comes out of spaced repetition. The slides here on the screen show what is called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. And it is evident that one exposure As you see the left one, very quickly the thing is forgotten. And as you keep repeating the thing, but third reminder, fourth reminder, which means 4 exposures or more, the retention levels get very high. And why is this important? Because as you get into the spaced repetition, the thing gets fed into your long-term memory. We have the short-term memory. What I've just said, you'll remember for a minute, for an hour, maybe for a day, but it does not last beyond. It sinks into the bottomless ocean of our mind. Only when ideas are internalized, then they can surface out at the right moment and be used. Retention and internalization, therefore, is the most important thing to change after identifying where to change and what ideas to use. And an idea recalled in time simply will be an idea used. Otherwise, it will be a waste of opportunity. That is one aspect related to spaced repetition. The second aspect is not just repeating the words and memorizing them. It is repeated actions that really form the habits. And get started, persist till the new habit is formed. And this is something ingrained in the LMI programs, particularly what Greg mentioned in the productivity program. This is used very effectively to produce change. This is where the replacement habit is formed by spaced repetition of actions. And once you've formed a new and a better habit, you are never going to put it up. The LMI program uses spaced repetition to produce visible and better than usual results to your potential, results of things that you desire happening. And the LMI process has both aspects woven in, retention of ideas as well as the practice of new actions to form new habits. New habits, new behaviors feed greater success. Our participants often surprise themselves with what they have attained. And Karen has just mentioned a few of them. You have incredible examples of people giving up smoking just because it's coming very deeply from inside. I'll now move on to another aspect which is very important, and that is communications. And the communication is something that is key to everything. A huge amount of money is lost by organizations because of some gap in communications. The fact is that by ourselves, we can only achieve so much. Organizations must run with and through people. Leaders have to work with and through people. And research shows that if the communication is bad, this is the kind of impact it can produce. We hear, often we do not listen to what we hear. We form opinions and we retort very quickly. This ends up in a kind of not getting the full message that is coming across. At times, we do not know the power of good questioning skills. So good questioning skills, good listening skills, and empathetic listening is a triad and a grouping that needs to come in if you have to become a good leader. And only then effective communication will take place. All these barriers of retorting quickly or not listening are habit patterns. And as I mentioned before, the habit pattern needs to change. You need to retain new ideas, adopt new ways, practice them with spaced repetition, and then huge new opportunities in communication effectiveness come up. Our LMI founder, Paul J. Mayer, shares a remarkable insight in communications. He says that communications is just not an exchange of words, phrases, or ideas. It is incomplete if it is not accompanied by an exchange of feelings. You know, if you're motivating a person, you've heard Grace say that the successful leader has to be someone who can influence people, inspire people. If you're speaking in a monotone, how on earth are you going to inspire anyone? If you do not exchange feelings, if you are not expressive about it, if you don't engage the other person out, nothing will happen. So communication is just not words and how well you can write and how well you can read. It is much more beyond that. We've had millions of people worldwide through our LMI programs absorb powerful new ideas to get this whole triad of the empathy, of questioning skills, listening skills, and much more. Find out where their blockage points lie, because we have a lot of tools that go into where am I, where do I need to change, and it pinpoints the change area within. Huge potential is unleashed when your communication is improved. Of course, in terms of money for the organization, it's huge. But also think about this, that when your communication is good, when you're exchanging those feelings, people respect you more. And that is a huge thing. Now, let me get on to a third area, which is very important. And we call it the triangle of communication. This is a very good technique, and I will explain a bit more about it. But before that, I'd like to tell you that the LMI interventions go across for several weeks. They have an elapsed time of maybe 9 weeks or so. And there is one meeting per week of a few hours. And we have highly skilled facilitators whose job is to build urges in you that culminate into desire. Nobody changes because you tell them how to change. Nobody changes because you give them a good idea. They only change when it boils up from inside. So part of the power of our LMI interventions is the facilitator and the methodology which we used. New habits are formed, they're channelized into generating visible and measurable results. And the intervening period between sessions is to practice all that spaced repetition of ideas and attitudes in your mind and of actions that form new habits. There are three entities involved when we deploy the LMI interventions. There is the participant, of course. There is a manager or a company mentor, and then there is a facilitator. Now, what is happening here is there is a feedback loop going on. We have a lot of feedback built into our process. Every session has a specific feedback sequence. There is a feedback sequence in the mid of the program. There is a feedback sequence at the end of the program. But because of this feedback going on, there is an open communication that is created between the participant and the manager. Now, most managers expect feedback from their people. They'd be upset if they do not receive feedback. But they miss out sometimes on a very important part, that feed forward is also important. If it's a one-way street, if it's only feedback going on, then it's poor communication. The triangle of communication helps an open dialogue form between all these. And after the intervention is over, guess what? The manager, mentor, and the participant have found that the tango of feed forward and feedback really works well for them, and they continue using the power of that. Time is short for what I have to say. There is much more in the LMI programs, whether it be that of very powerful tools for goal setting and goal planning, whether it is the strategic imperatives that Greg talked about, whether it is prioritization, whether it is very importantly on how to coach people. Many leaders fall short because they do not have coaching skills, and that is one of the key skills that our programs imbibes in our participants. One of the unique things I'd also like to mention is that there are a lot of ideas in there. So people know what to do. They find out through tools where they are lacking, so they need what to address. But the how to do it and the power of the facilitator in building those urges to change is massive. Thank you for a very patient hearing, and over to you, Jonah.
Ashok, thank you so much. Really appreciate you and all of our presenters. Again, I'm Jonah Erb. I'm our Executive Vice President here at the home office in Waco, Texas. And I want to go ahead and finish us out kind of as we wrap things up. So I would be remiss if I did not assume that there are some people here who are really passionate about what we're talking about today. So there's a few different kinds of people here today. Some people, you already know this. And I've already seen some questions coming in and some comments coming in of saying, can I please get this slide deck? Can I please get these statistics? Can I get this recording so I can send it to my leaders in our business or send it to the team here? This is exactly, we need, there's those people. There's people that this may be new. This may be eye-opening. There may be people that say, I want to help you do this. I want to partner with you in this. So I just want to take a couple minutes to just talk about that. So there's 13% of workers are truly passionate about their work. So again, either you're not in the right work or you don't view your work in the right way, right? And so we're not saying you need to change what you do. We're saying you need to change about how you think about what you do. So you are where you are for a reason. You are where you are for a purpose. And there's a plan for you at that work. And so are you making the progress you are capable of making with what you are currently doing? Not with what your current job is, but with what you're currently doing at your job. And that's very important. So here's some career trends. What do workers want in this new digital age? 72% of millennials and Gen Z want to start their own business. They're very entrepreneurial. So either they want to start their own business, or are you giving these people opportunities to have some leadership roles and feel like they're in charge of a team, in charge of something? It's important to make them feel like they're invested in, they're leaders. They get to lead something and kind of run a business inside of a business, right? Only 16% would prefer a corporate environment. So again, even if they're working in a corporate space, do they have these opportunities to feel like, okay, I get to take this and kind of make it my own, apply my passions to this? 60% of workers say they want to have a positive impact on the world. So again, who doesn't, right? But how many people really want to have a positive impact through their work? That's what we're looking at here. It's through my career, through my job. I want my job to have a direct impact on the world. So as an organization with setting goals, that's why that total person concept we talked about earlier is so important. Are you investing in your people as real people, not just a cog in some corporate machine that says, hey, do this by this date, and then I'll give you a bonus for when you do that. I'll give you another promotion or something. Are you allowing the people in your organization to actually have a positive, measurable impact on the lives of those around them, the community that they're a part of, and on the world as a whole? 73% of workers see remote work as the norm, not the exception. So now there's three opportunities, right? There's working in an office, there's hybrid work, and there's working from home full-time. We're seeing, different trends, different statistics coming out because this is kind of a new thing. So we don't know what the long-term impact is going to be of this. It seems like opinions change on this every day, but here's what we know. If you're working in an office, you have a lot of external environmental things coming at you at all times, a lot of distractions, so you need to be productive. If you're working from home, it's just a different kind of distraction. You got your phone buzzing, you got your dog barking, a kid crying in the other room. There's things going on. You need to know how to be focused. You need to know how to be all in. I can put my hand up and say from experience, we've got a 5-month-old at the house, my first kid. I've been trying to answer emails. He starts crying. I really need the effective personal productivity program. I never have had to deal with a 5-month-old while working before. That's a new thing for me. And I'm sure it's a new thing for all of us. And so with all of these things happening, are we truly investing in our people and seeing that they are real people that have real distractions that are important? How do they overcome those? How do they reach their goals? And so maybe you put your hand up, and again, this may not be a ton of people here, but some of you, maybe you don't currently have a position, or maybe you want to represent LMI in the organization you're in and bring LMI there. So what does LMI offer you if you were to want to partner with us, which again is not the purpose of today's meeting, but I'd be remiss if I didn't present the opportunity to you. You have a flexible work environment, ability to make an impact in your community, international support. We have people in over 90 countries around the world, timeless resources that have been around. We've been around for over 60 years now, and the ability to run your own business and be entrepreneurial. So maybe that's you. And if that's you, we've got people represented all over the world here. Reach out to your local representative and let them know. But before we wrap up, here's some information on how you can get in contact with us, and we'll get you in contact with a local representative. But we are not a webinar business. You heard that today. We are not a seminar business. Webinars are helpful. I hope you feel excited. I hope you feel energized. But just watching this webinar is not going to change anything about you. We've talked about that all day. So we would be lying to you if we said, take what you learned today and then go make a change. It's not going to happen. You have to go do something now. You have to take this and run with it. Whatever that is, we are here to partner with you. We would love to partner with you. But whatever you do, there's got to be some long-term change that happens now because of the excitement and the data that you've been presented today. So what are those next steps? We've got people in over 90 countries around the world. We have materials in about 30 languages. If you want more information on these programs and you want to partner with someone locally, reach out to us. We'd love to get you in touch with someone. And I will make sure I send out the recording to everyone who's been here and everyone who signed up. And that way you can go back and watch this, send this to your leadership in a non-passive aggressive way, ideally. Send it to your leadership, present the statistics to them, and let them know what you're looking for. But again, I want to say thank you to everyone who presented, everyone who attended. I know we've got people from, I think, every single continent. We didn't touch Antarctica. We got close, but we didn't get that. But every other continent is here. And so we appreciate you all for being here and tuning in. Thank you to our speakers. Again, this is just the beginning for you. This is not the end. Take this and run with this. What are those next steps? And I'll leave that with you. The ball is in your court about what you're going to do with your people and your organization and yourself next. Thank you. We hope you have a blessed rest of your week, and we hope to be in contact very soon, and we will send out the recording. Thanks, everyone.